the gallop of thunder-hooved vicissitude, she swept through the race fields of circumstance, or, swaying, she tossed between her heights and deeps, uplifted or broken on time's incessant wheel.
Good morning. We're reading in Book 2, starting with Canto 3, page 116. So just to review a little bit, Aswapati is journeying through the inner worlds, the subtle worlds. We saw an overview of these worlds in Book 2, Canto 1, and I'll just read a short passage. So he had already attained a very high realization, and this kind of describes his poise, his view. The eternal stillness saw in unmoved joy. This is at the bottom of page 95. His universal power at work display in plots of pain and dramas of delight, the wonder and beauty of her will to be. All, even pain, was the soul's pleasure here. Here all experience was a single plan, the thousand-fold expression of the one. All came at once into his single view. Nothing escaped his vast intuitive sight. Nothing drew near he could not feel as kin. He was one spirit with that immensity. Then in Canto 2, Sri Aurobindo has described the first world in which Asupati journeys, the world closest to our world, the world kingdom of subtle matter. And I'll just read a short passage from there that describes this world on page 113 at the break. In that fair, subtle realm behind our own, the form is all, and physical gods are kings. The inspiring light plays in fine boundaries. A faultless beauty comes by nature's grace. There liberty is perfection's guarantee. Although the absolute image lacks, the word incarnate, the sheer spiritual ecstasy, all is a miracle of symmetric charm, a fantasy of perfect line and rule. There all feel satisfied in themselves and whole. A rich completeness is by limit made. Marvel in an utter littleness abounds. An intricate rapture riots in a small space. Each rhythm is kin to its environment. Each line is perfect and inevitable. Each object faultlessly built for charm and rule and use. All is enamored of its own delight. And now in Canto 3, we begin a series of 7 cantos that describe the vital worlds, the worlds of life. Okay. It's the world of subtle matter. So the physical is dominant in that world. So the physical gods rule that world. Each plane of these subtle worlds has a predominant principle: physical, vital, mental, and then there are different levels within each of these kingdoms. But in the physical, that subtle physical, the physical principle is dominant. That's why the outer form is perfect. Everything is subservient to that outer expression in form. I think that there are some parallels, but that they're obviously not described in the same kind of detail, but she also kind of presses to go within in search of her soul, and she passes through some intervening layers of her being, but it's not described in this kind of rich detail. It's done very quickly. So that was already in that psychic realm, so far within. But I think the description of her passing through these intervening worlds is quite brief. I think there might be a kind of a difference in that Aswapati also climbs high above, and Savitri's yoga focuses more on this inner journey towards the soul, towards the deepest, inmost being. So in some ways, I think those are two different aspects of Sri Aurobindo's yoga and the experience that he aims at, the integral experience, two different aspects of it. So to some extent, I think these are described in these two different yogas of Aswapati and Savitri. I think I would tend to agree with Nitya a little bit more here. There's, Aswapati's realization comes very quickly. It's described in those, the yoga of the king, the yoga of the soul's release, and then the secret knowledge. So you see in those cantos that he has these very quick realizations. There's a line that I don't know the exact wording of it, but something like, even his first steps, exceeded our earth bounds. So it was like very soon already, let's say on, and what Nitya is describing as an incarnation, this also is described in the very first introduction of Aswapati in Canto 3. At the beginning of the canto, you see the second line, one in the front of the immemorial quest, protagonist of the mysterious play in which the unknown pursues himself through forms. So he's describing Aswapati here as kind of the forerunner of the evolution. And then it says, his was a spirit that stooped from larger spheres into our province of ephemeral sight, a colonist from immortality. So you see, he's the very special being, and we could say an incarnation. This is described right in the beginning of his introduction, here in the beginning of Canto 3. Mm. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah, there are differences. And in that sense, yeah, she's kind of more of a descent in order to take the evolution to a further step. Mm. Mm. But his journey is described in somewhat more detail, especially these travels through the inner planes. So we have 7 cantos describing these vital worlds, 2 of them kind of pertaining to hell. And this first canto, Canto 3, describing the life planes, gives us kind of an overview of it, showing both its height and its lower levels. So we'll read through the canto, and then we'll go back. So would you like to begin? Page 116. Just wait 1 second.
An uneven, broad ascent now lured his feet, answering a greater nature's troubled call. He crossed the limits of embodied mind and entered wide, obscure, disputed fields where all was doubt and change and nothing sure. A world of search and toil without repose. As one who meets the face of the unknown, a questioner with none to give reply, attracted to a problem never solved, always uncertain of the ground he trod, always drawn on to an inconstant goal, he traveled through a land peopled by doubts, in shifting confines, on a quaking base. In front, he saw a boundary ever unreached, and thought himself at each step nearer now, a far retreating horizon of my reach. A vagrancy was there that brooked no home, a journey of countless paths without a close. Nothing he found to satisfy his heart. A tireless wandering sought and could not cease.
Thank you. E?
Her life is the manifest incalculable, a movement of you unquiet seas, a long and venturous leap of the spirit into space, a vexed disturbance in the eternal calm. and impulse and passion of the infinite, assuming whatever shape her fancy wills, escaped from the restraint of settled forms, she has left the safety of the tried and known, unshepherded by the fear that walks through time, undaunted by fate that dogs and chance that springs. She accepts disaster as a common risk, careless of suffering, heedless of sin and fall. She wrestles with danger and discovery in the unexplored expanse of the soul. To be seemed only a long experiment, the hazard of a seeking ignorant force that tries all truth and, finding none supreme, moves on, unsatisfied, unsure of its end. As saw some inner mind, so life was shaped. From thought to thought she passed, from phase to phase, tortured by her own powers, or proud and blessed, now master of herself, now toy and slave.
Thank you. Helmut?
A huge inconsequence was her action's law, as if all possibility must be drained, and anguish and bliss were pastimes of the heart. In a gallop of thunder-hoofed vicissitudes, she swept through the race fields of circumstance, or, swaying, she tossed between her heights and deeps, uplifted or broken on time's inconstant wheel. Amid a tedious crawl of drab desires, she writhed. A worm mid worms in nature's mud, then, Titan statued, took all earth for food, ambitioned the seas for robe, for crown the stars, and shouting strode from peak to giant peak, clamoring for worlds to conquer and to rule. Then, wantonly enamored of sorrow's face, she plunged into the anguish of the depths, and, wallowing, clung to her own misery. In dolorous converse with her squandered self, she wrote the account of all that she has lost, or said with grief as with an ancient friend. A romp of violent rapture soon was spent, or she lingered tied to an inadequate joy, missing the turns of fate, missing life's goal.
Thank you. Nitya?
A scene was planned for all her numberless moods, where each could be the law and way of life, but none could offer a pure felicity. Only a flickering zest they left behind, or the fierce lust that brings a dead fatigue. Amid her swift, untold variety, something remained dissatisfied, ever the same, and in the new saw only a face of the old. For every hour repeated all the rest, and every change prolonged the same unease. A spirit of herself and aim unsure, tired soon of too much joy and happiness. She needs the spur of pleasure and of pain, and the native taste of suffering and unrest. She strains for an end that never she can she win. A perverse savour haunts her thirsting lips, for the grief she weeps which came from her own choice, for the pleasure yearns that racked with wounds her breast. Aspiring to heaven, she turns her steps towards hell. Chance she has chosen, and danger for playfellows. Fate's dreadful swing she has taken for cradle and seat. Yet pure and bright from the timeless was her birth. A lost world rapture lingers in her eyes. Her moods are faces of the infinite. Beauty and happiness are her native right, and endless bliss is her eternal home.
Margaret?
This now revealed its antique face of joy, a sudden disclosure to the heart of grief, tempting it to endure and long and hope. Even in changing worlds bereft of peace, in an air racked with sorrow and with fear, and while his feet trod on a soil unsafe, he saw the image of a happier state. In an architecture of hieratic space, circling and mounting towards creation's tops, at a blue height which never was too high for warm communion between body and soul, as far as heaven, as near as thought and hope, glimmered the kingdom of a griefless life. Above him, in a new celestial world, other than the heavens beheld by mortal eyes, on a fretted ceiling of the gods, an archipelago of laughter and fire, swam stars apart in a rippled sea of sky. Towered spirals, magic rings of vivid hue, and gleaming spheres of strange felicity floated through distance like a symbol world. On the trouble and the toil they could not share, on the unhappiness they could not aid, impervious to life's suffering, struggle, grief, untarnished by its anger, gloom and hate, unmoved, untouched, looked down great visions plain, blissful forever in their timeless light.
Thank you. Naren?
Absorbed in their own beauty and content, of their immortal gladness they live sure. Apart in their self-glory plunged, remote burning they swam in a vague, lucent haze, an everlasting refuge of dream light, a nebula of splendors of the gods, made from the musings of eternity. Almost unbelievable by human faith, hardly they seem the stuff of things that are, as though a magic television's glass outlined to some magnifying inner eye, they shone like images thrown from a far scene, too high and glad for mortals' lids to share, seize. But near and real to the longing heart and to the body's passionate thought and sense are the hidden kingdoms of beatitude. In some close, unattained realm which yet we feel, immune from the harsh clutch of death and time, escaping the search of sorrow and desire, in bright and enchanted space, safe peripheries, forever wallowing in bliss they lie.
Thank you. Sure.
A dream and trance amuse before our eyes, cross a subtle vision's inner field, white rapturous landscapes fleeting from the sight, the figures of the perfect kingdom pass, and behind them leave a shining memory's trail. Imagined scenes or great eternal worlds, dream caught or sensed, they touch our hearts with their depths, unreal seeming, yet more real than life, happier than happiness, truer than things true. If dreams, these were our captured imagines, dreams, truths, made false earth's vain realities. In a swift, eternal moment fix their lives, or ever recalled, come back to longing eyes. Calm heavens of imperishable light, illuminated continues of violet peace, oceans and rivers of the mirth of God, and griefless countries under purple suns.
Thank you. Would you read?
This, once a star of bright, remote idea, or imagination's comet trial of dream, took now a close shape of reality. The gulf between dream truth, years back, was crossed. The wonder worlds of life were dreams no more. Her vision made all they unveiled its own. Their scenes, their happenings met his eyes and heart, and smote them with pure loveliness and bliss. A breathless summit region drew his gaze, whose boundaries jutted into a sky of spell, and dipped towards a strange ethereal base. The quintessence glowed of life's supreme delight. On a spiritual and mysterious peak, only a miracle's high transfiguring line divided life from the formless infinite and sheltered time against eternity. Out of that formless stuff, time mints its shape. The eternal's quiet holds the cosmic act. The protean images of the world force have drawn the strength to be, the will to last, from a deep ocean of dynamic peace.
Thank you. No, one second. No, here.
Inverting the spirit's apex towards life, she spends the plastic liberties of the one to cast in acts the dream of her caprice. His wisdom's call steadies her careless feet. He props her dance upon a rigid base. His timeless, still immutability must standardize her creation's miracle. Out of the void's unseeing energies, inventing the scene of a concrete universe, by his thought she has fixed its paces in its blind acts. She sees by flashes of his all knowing light. At her will, the inscrutable supermind leans down to guide her force that feels but cannot know. Its breath of power controls her restless seas, and life obeys the governing idea. At her will, led by a luminous evanescence, the hazardous experimenting mind pushes its way through obscure possibles, mid-chance formations of an unknowing world. Our human ignorance moves towards the truth that nascence may become omniscient. Transmuted instincts shape to divine thoughts, thoughts house infallible, immortal sight, and nature climbs towards God's identity.
Thank you. Would you read?
The master of the world's self made her slave is the executor of her fantasies. She has canalized the seas of omnipotence. She has limited by her laws the illimitable. The immortal bound himself to do her works. He labors at the task her ignorance sets. Hidden in the cape of her mortality, the worlds, the forms her goddess fancy makes, have lost their origin on unseen heights. even severed, straying from their timeless source, even deformed, obscure, accursed, and fallen, since even fall has its perverted joy, and nothing she leaves out that serves delight. These two can to the peaks revert or hear, cut out the sentence of the spirit's fall, recover their forfeited divinity. At once caught in an eternal vision's sweep, he saw her pride and splendor of high-born zones, and her regions crouching in the nether deeps. Above was a monarchy of unfallen self, beneath was the gloomy trance of the abyss, an opposite pole or dim antipodes.
Thank you. Klaus? Just wait one.
They were vasts of the glory of life's absolute. All laughed in a safe immortality and in eternal childhood of a soul. Before darkness came and pain and grief were born, where all could dare to be themselves and one, and wisdom played in sinless innocence, with naked freedom in truth's happy sun. There were worlds of her laughter and dreadful irony. There were fields of her taste of toil and strife and tears. Her head lay on the breast of amorous death. Sleep imitated the while extinction's peace. The light of God she has parted from his dark, to test the savour of their opposites. Here mingling in man's heart their tones and hues, have woven his being's mutable design, his life a forward rippling stream in time, his nature's constant fixed mobility, his soul a moving picture's changeful film, his cosmos chaos of personality. The grand creatrix with her cryptic touch has turned to pathos and power being's self-dream, made a passion play of its fathomless mystery.
Thank
But here were worlds lifted halfway to heaven. The veil was there, but not the shadowy wall. In forms not to see remote from human glove, some fashion of the inviolate purity broke through a ray of the original blaze. Heaven's joy might have been earth if earth were pure. There could have reached out divinish sense and heart. Some natural felicity blight extreme, some thrill of supernature absolute. All strengths could laugh and sport on earth's hard road, and never feel her full edge of pain. All love could play nowhere nature's shame, but she had stabled her dream in martyr's court, and still her door was bared to sing supreme.
Thank you. Sudan.
These walls could gods break, visiting their tops. Some glimmers of the transcendence hymns was there. Across the white aeonic silences, immortal figures of embodied joy traverse wide passages near to eternity's sleep, pure mystic voices in the beatitudes hush, appeal to love's immaculate sweetnesses, calling his honeyed touch to thrill the worlds, his blissful hands to seize on nature's limbs, his sweet intolerant might of union to take all beings into his Saviour arms, drawing to his pity the rebels and the weak, to force on them the happiness they refuse, a chant hymeneal to the unseen divine, a flaming rhapsody of white desire, loud and immortal music into the heart, and woke the slumbering ear of ecstasy. A purer, fairer sense had there its home, a burning earth so earthly limbs can hold. Once drew a large, unburdened, spacious breath, and the heart's beat from beat to rapturous beat.
Thank you. Life's contraries were lovers or natural friends, and her extremes, keen edges of harmony. Indulgence with a tender purity came and nursed the God on her maternal breast. There none was weak, so falsehood could not live. Ignorance was a thin shade protecting light. Imagination, the free will of truth. Pleasure, a candidate for heaven's fire. The intellect was beauty's worshipper. Strength was the slave of calm spiritual law. Power laid its head upon the breasts of bliss. There were summit glories inconceivable, autonomies of wisdom's still self-rule, and high dependencies of her virgin Son, illumined theocracies of the seeing soul, throned in the power of the transcendence ray. Helmut? No, down. Okay, go ahead.
A vision of grandeurs, a dream of magnitude, in sun-bright kingdoms move with regal gait. Assemblies crowded, senates of the gods. Life puissance is reign and seats of marble will, high dominations and autocracies, unlaureled strengths and armed imperative might. All objects there were great and beautiful, all beings wore a royal stamp of power. There sat the oligarchies of natural law, proud, violent heads serve one calm monarch rule. All the soul's postures dawn divinity. There met the ardent mutual intimacies of master's joy and the joy of servitude, imposed by love on love's hurt that obeys, and love's body held beneath a rapturous yoke. All was a game of meeting kingliness, for worship lifts the worshipper's bold strength. Close to the god's pride and bliss his soul adores. The ruler there is one with all he rules. To him who serves with a free equal heart, obedience is his princely training school, his nobility coronet and privilege, his faith is a high nature's idiom, his service a spiritual sovereignty.
Thank you. No, no. Sir? No. Lady.
There were real where knowledge joined creative power. In her high home and made her all his own. The ground illuminate sizes her gloaming limbs, and filled them with the passion of his ray, till all her body was its transparent house, and all her soul a counterpart of his soul. Hypotheses transfigured by wisdom's touch. Her days became a luminous sacrifice, an immortal moth in happy and endless fire. She burned in his sweet, intolerable blaze, a captive life wed by conqueror. In his wide sky she built her world anew. She gave to mind's calm peace the motor speed, to thinking a need to live what the soul saw, to living an impetus to know and see. This splendor grasped her presence to him clung. She crowned the ID a king in purple robes, put her magic serpent sept into grips, made forms in his inward visions rhythmic shapes, and her acts the living body of his will.
Thank you. Down, no, down. E.
A flaming thunder, a creator flash, his victor light rode on her deathless force. The centaur's mighty gallop bore the god, life throned with mind, a double majesty. Worlds were there of happiness great and grave, an action ringed with dream, laughter with thought, and passion there could wait for its desire until it heard the near approach of God. Worlds were there of childlike mirth and joy, a carefree youthfulness of mind and heart, found in the body a heavenly instrument. It lit an aureate halo round desire and freed the deified animal in the limbs to divine gambols of love and beauty and bliss on a radiant soil that gazed at heaven's smile. A swift impulse stinted not nor stopped. It knew not how to tire. Happy were its tears. Their work was play, and play the only work. The tasks of heaven, a game of godlike might, a celestial bacchanal forever pure, unstayed by faintness as in mortal frames. Life was an eternity of rapture's moods, Age never came. Care never lined the face.
Thank you. Helmut?
Imposing on the safety of the stars, a race and laughter of immortal strength, the nude god children in their playfields ran, smiting the winds with splendor and with speed. Of storm and sun they made companions, sported with the white mane of tossing seas, slew distance trampled to death under their wheels, and wrestled in the arenas of their force. Imperious in their radiance like the suns, they kindled heaven with the glory of their limbs, flung like a divine largesse to the world. A spell to force the heart to stark delight, they carried the pride and mastery of their charm, as if life's banner on the roads of space. Ideas were luminous comrades of the soul. Mind played with speech, cast javelins of thought, but needed not these instruments toil to know. Knowledge was nature's pastime like the rest. Investitured with the fresh heart's bright ray, an early God instinct's child inheritors, tenants of the perpetuity of time, still thrilling with the first creation's bliss, they steeped existence in their youth of soul.
Thank you.
An exquisite and vehement tyranny, the strong compulsion of their will to joy, poured smiling streams of happiness through the world. There reigned a breath of high immune content, a fortunate gate of days in tranquil air, a flood of universal love and peace. The sovereignty of tireless sweetness lived, like a song of pleasure on the lips of time. A large spontaneous order freed the will, a sun frank winging of the soul to bliss, the breadth and greatness of the unfettered act, and the swift fire-hearth golden liberty. There was no falsehood of soul severance. There came no crookedness of thought or word to rob creation of its native truth. All was sincerity and natural force. There, freedom was sole rule and highest law. In a happy series, climbed or plunged these worlds, in realms of curious beauty and surprise, in fields of grandeur and of titan power. Life played at ease with her immense desires.
Thank you. Yeah, John. Margaret.
A thousand Edens she could build nor pause. No bound was set to her greatness and to her grace and to her heavenly variety. awake with a cry and stir of numberless souls, arisen from the breast of some deep infinite, smiling like a newborn child at love and hope, in her nature housing the immortal's power, in her bosom bearing the eternal will. No guide she needed, but her luminous heart. No fall debased the godhead of her steps, no alien night had come to blind her eyes. There was no use for grudging ring or fence. Each act was a perfection and a joy, abundant to her rapid fancy's mutes, and the rich-colored riot of her mind, initiate of divine and mighty dreams, magician builder of unnumbered forms, exploring the measures of the risen of God. At will she wove a withered wonder dance, a Dionysian's goddess of delight, a bacchanal of creative ecstasy.
Okay, go to the gentleman.
This world of bliss he saw and felt its call, but found no way to enter into this joy. Across the conscious gulf there was no bridge. Darker air encircled still his soul, tied to an imagine of unquiet life. In spite of yearning mind and longing sense, to a sad thought they by grey experience formed, and a vision dimmed by care and sorrow and sleep, all this seemed only a bright, desirable dream, conceived in a longing distance by the heart of one who walks in the shadow of earth's pain. Although he once had felt the Eternal's clasp, too near two suffering worlds his nature lived, and where he stood were entrances of night. Hardly too close beset by the world's care can the dense mold in which we have been made return sheer joy to joy, pure light to light. For its torment will to think and live, first to mingled pain and pleasure awoke, and still it keeps the habit of its birth. A dire duality is our way to be.
Thank you.
In the crude beginnings of this mortal world, life was nor mind's play, nor heart's desire. When earth was built in the unconscious void, nothing was save a material scene, identified with sea and sky and stone. Our young gods yearned for the release of souls, asleep in objects vague, inanimate. In that desolate grandeur, in that beauty bare, in the deaf stillness, mid the unheeded sounds, heavy was the uncommunicated load of Godhead in a world that had no needs, nor none was there to feel or to receive. This solid mass, which brooked no throb of sense, could not, could not contain their vast creative urge. Immersed no more in matter's harmony, the spirit lost its static repose. In the uncaring trance, it grouped for sight, passioned for the movements of a conscious heart, famishing for speech and thought and joy and love, in the dumb, sensitive wheeling day and night, hungered for the beat of yearning and response. The poised unconscious, shaken with a touch, the intuitive silence trembling with a name, they cried to life to invade the senseless mold, and in brute forms awake divinity. A voice was heard on the mute rolling globe, a murmur moaned in the unlistening void.
Thank you.
A being seemed to breathe where once was none. something pent up in dead, insentient depths, denied conscience existence, lost to joy, turned as if one asleep since dateless time, aware of its own buried reality, remembering its forgotten self and right, it yearned to know, to aspire, to enjoy, to live. Life heard the call and left her native light, overflowing from her bright, magnificent plain on the rigid coil and sprawl of mortal space. Here too, the gracious, great winged angel poured her splendor and her swiftness and her bliss, hoping to fill a fair new world with joy. As comes a goddess to a mortal's breast and fills his days with a celestial clasp, she stooped to make her home in transient shapes. In matter's womb, she cast the immortal's fire. In the unfeeling vast woke, thought and hope, smote with her charm and beauty flesh and nerve, and forced delight on earth's insensible frame. Alive and clad with trees and herbs and flowers, earth's great brown body smiled towards the skies. Azure replied to azure in the sea's laugh. New sentient creatures filled the unseen depths. Life's glory and swiftness ran in the beauty of the beasts. Man dared and thought and met with his soul of the world.
Thank you.
But while the magic breath was on its way, before her gifts could reach our present hearts, a dark, ambiguous presence questioned all. The secret will that robes itself with night and offers to spirit the ordeal of the flesh imposed a mystic mask of death and pain. Interned now in the slow and suffering years, sojourns the winged and wonderful wayfarer, and can no more recall her happier state, but must obey the inert inconscience law, insensible foundation of a world in which blind limits are on beauty laid, and sorrow and joy as struggling comrades live. A dim and dreadful muteness fell on her, abolished was her subtle mighty spirit, and slain her boon of child god happiness, and all her glory into littleness turned, and all her sweetness into a main desire. To feed death with her works is here life's doom. So veiled was her immortality that she seemed, inflicting consciousness on unconscious things, an episode in an eternal death, a myth of being that must forever cease. Such was the evil mystery of her change. End of Canto.
Thank you. Now we'll go back to the beginning. Go down. And you read the first half.
Canto free, with glory and the fall of life. An uneven, broad ascent now leered his feet, answering a greater nature's troubled call. He crossed the limits of embodied mind and entered wide, obscure, disputed fields, where all was doubt and change and nothing sure. A world of search and toil without repose, as one who meets the face of the unknown, a questioner with none to give reply, attracted to a problem never solved. Always uncertain of the ground he trod, always drawn on to an inconstant goal. He travelled through a land peopled by doubts, in shifting confines on a quaking base.
Thank you. We'll pause there for a minute. Just take it in for a while. So Aswapati is leaving behind the kingdom of subtle matter, is now ascending into the worlds of life. And we're given a kind of broad description, general description of these worlds, where there's everything is doubt and change and nothing sure. Everything is unstable, changeable. Uncertain of the ground he trod. Always drawn on to an inconstant goal. Always lured further and further, but nothing is ever stable, nothing ever gives satisfaction. Yeah. Yeah, he crossed the limits of embodied mind. I'm not sure why he's putting that there, but we're in embodied mind. He's leaving behind the surface mind in which we dwell. He's going within the physical mind. But I don't know if it refers to that world of subtle matter. Yeah. So it's a little curious. But maybe it's just referring to that he's leaving, he's going within, away from the surface mentality in which we live. Well, it's the principle of mind. But embodied mind, like Nitya said, physical mind, that is what we are normally encased in. That is our normal poise. So he's crossing into this world of the vital, of the inner vital. Yeah, that's why it's a little curious, but that's why I'm saying perhaps it's just referring to the fact that he's going within, away from the embodied physical mind in which we dwell. He's going into the inner realm. Mhm. So you're in the next passage, huh? I mean, I don't see her in the passage we read. Yeah, he'll be referring, I think she'll be referring to the life. So that's kind of this vexed disturbance. It's characteristic of the life. Well, the way I look at it, it's the glory and the fall. So he's looking at both the higher realms of life and the lower, the fallen realms of life. Yeah. In this canto, he'll be describing both. Mhm. Something higher is calling him in a way. Let's, yeah. That's the characteristic of this whole realm in which he's in now. This uncertainty, this changeableness. Hmm? Well, it's yeah. There's aspects of it that are completely satisfied with it. And there's aspects that are not satisfied, that never get satisfied. Yes, he's characterizing this whole realm very much in this passage. This changeableness, this uncertainty, this always kind of searching for something but never getting satisfied even when you grasp it. And we see it also, it's very close also to our world. I mean, we talked about the world of subtle matter being very close, but this also we can really identify, I think, with a lot of what we'll read here. But I would like to continue. So, are we at Sudanya? You're next. You come down.
In front he saw a boundary never unreached, and thought himself at each step nearer now. A far retreating horizons of mirage, a vagrancy was there that brooked no home, a journey of countless paths without a close. Nothing he found to satisfy his heart, a tireless wandering short, and could not cease. The life is the manifest incalculable, a movement of unquiet seas along and venturous leaps of spirit into space, a vexed disturbance in the eternal calm, an impulse and passions of the infinite, assuming whatsoever shape her fancy wills, escape from the restraints of subtle forms. She has left the safety of the tried and known.
Thank you. A vagrant is someone without a home, wandering from place to place. So a vagrancy was there that brooked no home, that really tolerated no home or it's the same image of this kind of constant moving and searching, but never finding anything stable on which to cling to stand on. A movement of unquiet seas. A long and venturous leap of spirit into space. A vexed disturbance in the eternal calm. Vexed is agitated, troubled, irritated. No, vexed is agitated, troubled, irritated, kind of an anxiousness. Yeah, he's giving a general description of life, which we see also in our life. I think we can stop there for today.
Above him, in a new celestial vault, other than the heavens beheld by mortal eyes, as on a fretted ceiling of the gods, an archipelago of laughter and fire, swam stars apart in a rippled sea of sky.
Thanks to Shara Bindu.